On today's show, we're going to be breaking down New Jersey's prospect pool. We're going to look at the Devils' top prospects, their draft grade, their season expectations, and a lot more on today's episode.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this podcast, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. I'm Hattie Kalikash, Director of North American Scouting for Dobber Prospects, back again finally after a long-winded bout with illness. I'm finally able to speak again, so I'm happy to be back. And obviously joined us as usual by Sebastian Hyde, Director of European Scouting for Dobber Prospects. And on today's show, we'll be breaking down the New Jersey Devils prospect pool in detail. We'll look at their draft, the prospects they added in the 2024 NHL draft, grades of their draft as well in the first segment. In the second segment, we'll look at the prospect pool outlook. So we'll look at their forwards, defensemen, and goalies and grade their prospect pool overall, especially with the new additions. And finally, we'll look at their 2024-25 projections and expectations. So what we're looking for them to add to their team with the new additions they had in free agency, in the offseason, all that stuff, which prospects could step up, all that good stuff. Before we get into any of that, this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL at checkout for $20 off your first purchase. If you're watching on YouTube, as usual, remember to like and subscribe, leave us a comment letting us know what you want us to talk about next, and if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please leave us a rate and review, and make sure to make us your first listen of the day. So let's get things started right away, Sebastian, here with their big addition here from the 2024 NHL draft. We'll start off with, big, literally and metaphorically, with their 10th overall selection, the New Jersey Devils added Anton Silayev. Talk me through his game. You scouted him all year. In fact, their whole draft class is mainly European guys, so I'll let you take the reins on this one.
Yeah, for sure. So Anton Silayev is the hulking 6'7", 207-pound left shot defenseman who was really projected as a top 2 or top 3 pick for most of this past draft class and ended up falling relative to his draft stock here at 10th overall. I'm sure the New Jersey Devils were very excited to have him available to them in that draft selection. And he played the entirety of last season in the KHL and was really able to flash both his crushing physical nature. He's massive. He can supplicate play into the boards really effectively. He's a really aggressive rush defender when he wants to be. He can close his gaps with incredible quickness. But the actual processing behind his play is still more of a work in progress at this stage. Silayev has a tendency of hesitating when he's pressured on puck. He has a tendency of waiting too long to initiate contact, or waiting too long to close his gap, or not waiting long enough. The timing behind his defensive implications is certainly still quite raw, and he's going to need some time to develop before he's going to be a reliable player at the NHL level. But that said, his tools are fantastic. They are unique. He's a bit of a unicorn in many ways with how he's built on the ice, even though his overall output as a player isn't necessarily unicorn-like. But yeah, a very interesting swing on high-end tools and crushing physical frame.
Absolutely. It's so weird that you get to call a 6'7" defenseman one of the best skaters in the draft, but Silayev is actually one of the best skaters in the draft.
Yes.
Let's move right on to their second round pick. We've got Mikhail Yegorov, 6'5", 187-pound, a goaltender who played for the Omaha Lancers, I believe, if I'm not wrong, in the USHL. And Yegorov was a very interesting pick in this range. I thought that, just like last year, there wasn't really a big standout goaltender, so a lot of people were expecting goalies to start going in the second round. That's exactly what happened, but a lot of goaltenders were picked higher than people had them projected, just like last year, and Yegorov was one of them. I like the addition with Yegorov. He's a big, calm goaltender. He's not necessarily the most athletic or the most explosive goalie, but he stays calm. He evaluates his options really well. He can scramble in a pinch when things get rough and he needs to just go post to post and just explode. He can. But he's not necessarily a goalie that you would expect to just throw himself all over the ice like UC Saros. They're different goaltenders. I like what Yegorov brings to the game, and I think in terms of upside, he's up there with the best in this draft. So I like this addition for New Jersey here in the second round. Let's move right on to Kasper Pikkarainen, a prospect that you started to like a lot more as the year went on. He made an appearance on our final board at Dobber Prospects. Talk me through his addition here for the New Jersey Devils with their third pick of the draft.
Yeah, so Pikkarainen is a 6'3", 198-pound right shot right winger who has a really heavy shot. Like the weight behind his shot is one of his biggest offensive tools. He's very physical. He's never really one to shy down from a physical battle or a board battle, and he has some real flair as a power forward style of player. This past season, he was playing mainly at the U20 level in Finland, where he scored 12 goals and 28 points through 34 games. The actual goal totals don't quite resemble how dangerous of a shooter he is just yet, mainly because his goal scoring habits aren't overly refined, despite the presence of a really heavy release. But
Yeah.
there's some big physical tools to work with here, whether that be that physicality or the heavy shot. I think in terms of NHL projection, I struggle to see him in a top 6 role, but as a potential bottom 6 power forward who might even be a shooting threat on the second power play when he tops out, I can see the rationale behind this selection. But the next pick on another big power forward from Europe is one that I liked even more, and that was the selection of Herman Traff. They're in the third round at 91st overall. He's also 6'3". He's even heavier at 216 pounds. He can play on either wing, and this is a player who is really quick, very intense. He's a fantastic forechecker. He's able to combine his physicality, his reach, and that intensity to just snuff space and time away from his opponents on the puck. He played 10 games at the SHL level this past season, where I thought he played a decent level of hockey, but wasn't a creator at that level of skill. But at the J20 level, he scored 13 goals and 21 points through 26 games. He's not an offensive dynamo by any stretch of the imagination, but a very versatile offensive piece who will also be able to round out his defensive game, in my opinion, because he has that level of intensity, the physicality, and the range that can be applied and projected into a checking role defensively as well. And I think that his chances of making a bottom 6 role are more optimistic than they are with Pikkarainen.
Yeah, for sure. It's really interesting with Traff and Pikkarainen, is that you have two additions there in the third round that kind of occupy the two different types of roles you can have as a big forward, right? In a lineup. With Pikkarainen, you've got more of the upside element of it. With Traff, you have a bit more of the grinder, kind of intense forechecker type of, puck winner type of forward. So I like those two additions, Casper Pikkarainen and Herman Traff in the third round. Let's move to the fifth round, which was the next selection of the New Jersey Devils, and they selected Max Graham of the Kelowna Rockets in the WHL. And I got a decent amount of viewings on Max Graham just by virtue of him playing on the same team as Tija Ginla. And with Max Graham, I didn't really see anything that stood out massively in terms of skill. He's decently intense. He's got a decent frame. I believe he's built at, 6'3", 203. He's able to drop the shoulder, go to the net. He's able to protect pucks along the boards and extend possession. I like the overall physical tools with Max Graham. I don't see him necessarily as a high-end skater, but he's good enough to get around. The main question for me is, where does he fit skill-wise? Because most NHLers, even in the bottom 6, have at least one standout trait skill-wise, either passing or shooting or handling or net front presence, the ability to tip pucks in the back of the net, at least something to work with. I haven't seen that from Max Graham so far this season, but he's an interesting bet just based on his ability to just round out a lineup and play down your lineup and be just a physical presence down low. So a decent ad there. Then we have Viti Lohivara, a 6'4", 207-pound goaltender, who was added in the fifth round, I believe. Yes, fifth round, 146 overall. So 7 selections after Max Graham. Talk me through his game, because I've heard rumblings about him at the end of the year, but really nothing that stood out massively, right?
Yeah, he's interesting. I mean, the actual results that he had on the ice weren't the strongest in the world. He was playing at the U20 level in Finland this past season, put up an 890 save percentage, went 13-6 in those games that he started. He got into one game at the Liga level where he came in as a backup goaltender and played a couple minutes on the ice there. But overall, what you're drafting here is the frame. He has a great frame as a goaltender at 6'4", 207, as you'd mentioned. But he also, he's a clean skater. He gets post to post really smoothly. He's athletic, and that combination of smooth movement, athleticism, big frame and progression in his overall game on the ice, and becoming more composed and better at tracking the puck, for instance. It's a swing to take on a big goaltender, and of all the swings taken on big goaltenders in the mid to late rounds, this was one of the better ones in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. And let's move on to the sixth round, the final selection of the New Jersey Devils, and the smallest player they selected at 6'1", 190 pounds, Matthias Milovsky out of the Bécamo Dracor in the QMJHL. And Milovsky grew on me a lot at the end of the year. I saw a lot more intelligence and details in his game that I hadn't seen before. He put up decent results on a really good team, and played down their lineup mainly, just mainly because of how good their kind of top range of forwards were. They had Justin Poirier, they had Raoul Bollard, who were drafted ahead of him. They had a decent amount of players there who competed for better spots in the lineup than he did. But overall, I really liked the results, the ability to dictate play off his stick, and just a little hints of playmaking skill and intelligence that he showed. And at 6'1", 190, he can carry himself physically as well. So there's decent amounts to work with here, and I think that was probably in terms of value for pick in the sixth round, I think Milovsky was a better selection than a lot of the selections they made ahead of him. Just basically because I saw Milovsky as a contender for a top 100 spot, and drafting him at 171st. That's really decent value for me. I think that was a great selection by the Devils. But that wraps things up for the picks themselves. Let's give them a grade. We agreed upon a B- grade for this draft, mainly because outside of Anton Silayev, I don't see any major swings. I don't see any kind of home run selections or players that were drafted way above market value or where they were supposed to go, right? Would you agree with that?
I would. I think there are some decent picks in this class, especially I think Mikhail Yegorov and Herman Traff would stand out as decent swings, and clearly like you like the Milovsky pick as well. But Salayev is the one player from this draft class that has like clear potential as a top of the lineup type of player. And even there, I think second pairing is a bit more linear in terms of a projection compared to first pairing. But the nice thing is that fits in with New Jersey's structure, with Luke Hughes and Sion Yemetz really occupying those future top pairing projected spots. Which I think will be quite helpful for Salayev's development and not taking on too big of a workload and being able to actually find his own best game rather than being forced into playing minutes that he's not equipped to. So I think as a whole, a B- grade is pretty indicative of there being upside in this class, but there also being a bit of a conservative approach on many of these selections in terms of just adding size that can play maybe at the end of the day a bottom of the lineup role in a fourth line or a third pairing, but mainly you're just trying to secure pieces that will compete for spots in training camp at some point, rather than trying to swing hard on the players that could push way up the lineup.
For sure. And I think the latter approach is probably what the Devils needed, but we'll get into that in just a sec. We'll look at the prospect pool outlook with the New Jersey Devils, the overall fit of, their forwards, defensemen, goalies, what their needs are, especially, and which grade we would give them. In just a second, but just before, we'll give you a quick read from our sponsors at Game Time. If you're looking to buy cheap tickets last minute to any event, Game Time is the best place to secure them. Game Time is safe, secure, and a great option in terms of getting tickets, especially when you're looking for tickets last minute before an event. Game Time has tickets up to the last minute before the event starts, and sometimes even an hour after they start, you can still get tickets over on Game Time for the event that you're looking for. I love Game Time. I use it all the time when, I've got a schedule that changes around a lot, so I can end up with a free afternoon out of nowhere. And when that happens, I like to just browse Game Time and see what's going on in my area, whether that's an NHL game, PWHL game, a concert, comedy, theater, you name it. Game Time has it all. As long as it requires a ticket, you can find it on Game Time. And Game Time is obsessed with saving you money as well. They love to give you deals all over the place. Flash deals, zone deals, last minute deals, you name it. They've got you covered. And the Game Time guarantee makes sure that you get the best price for your tickets. If you find a ticket in the same section and row for less than what Game Time has to offer, Game Time credits you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, it's super simple. Just create an account and use code LOCKEDONNHL at checkout for $20 off your first purchase. So download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Alrighty, so let's move right on to our prospect pool outlook for the New Jersey Devils. And let's start with the fours that they have. The main stand standouts for me are Arseny Gritsyuk and Lenny Haminaho, and I wouldn't call either one of them a bona fide kind of top line talent or anything like that. But I think both of them have decent odds of ending up on a second line, and it's for completely different reasons. Arseny Gritsyuk is really all about skill, all about dynamism, all about speed, energy, and all that good stuff. He's a really skillful winger who loves to bring the puck into in your face, basically as a forward. Loves to skate right at defensemen, get them on their heels and shoot around them, pass through them. You name it, he's got it. Whereas Haminaho is a lot more of a cerebral, intelligent, intricate kind of forward who likes to use his brain to solve problems rather than his skill. With Haminaho, the main weakness has always been the lack of foot speed. But I think that overall he's got enough intelligence, enough awareness, enough defensive ability, and enough goal scoring skill to be a decent kind of middle six forward for the New Jersey Devils. There's a couple other forwards we can talk about, some standouts. Chase Stillman, Kasper Pikkarainen, and Herman Traff, who we just talked about, Matthias Malofsky as well. They previously added guys like Cam Squires, Josh Schvillman, Samu Salminen, and Max Graham, who they just added as well. But that group, I think the main issue, and we'll talk about it more in the needs, is that these are a bunch of guys who will probably compete for kind of bottom of the lineup roles rather than being kind of high upside, high risk, high reward types of guys. That's my kind of main concern with the forward group. On the flip side, just to describe it quickly, we've graduated Luke Hughes and Simon Nemec, which brings down the quality of the decor, but there's still a lot to work with here, right?
For sure. I mean, you're still ending up here with Anton Silayev and Seamus Casey, which might be the second pairing long term. I mean, we'll see which players among the elder statesmen on the blue line in New Jersey stick around for the era where Silayev and Casey might be playing at the NHL level. Because, I mean, we'll get into that in the last segment. There's a lot of bodies on defense with a lot of experience behind them, which will limit the opportunities for these young players. But both Silayev and Casey, I think, could still use a couple more years of development. Silayev is going to need at least 2 to 3 before he pushes for an NHL spot. And even Seamus Casey could use a year or 2 in the AHL, even once he does sign his entry-level deal. But those are 2 players that are going to be really impactful pieces moving forward for the New Jersey Devils. Casey as a puck-moving offensive defenseman on a second pairing who can add a real punch to a second power play unit, as well as creating at even strength and really being able to flash playmaking skill and facilitating offensive creation from his forwards and taking some weight off of their shoulders in terms of needing to create on the ice. And as we mentioned in the last segment, Anton Silayev has real upside as a stopper, a rush defender, a shutdown defenseman. But the on-puck hesitation is an area that still needs some real like fine-tuning. But a lot to like with the raw physical tools with Silayev. But beyond him, you still have a couple other players in that defensive core, whether it be college guys like Charlie Letty and Ethan Edwards. You have a couple bodies still there on that defensive core that could end up being bottom pairing guys. But the nice thing is there's no pressure for any player apart from the big 4 names on defense in Luke Hughes, Simon Nemec, Anton Silayev, and Seamus Casey to push for a top 4 role. Because when you combine those 4 prospects or those 4 young players with all the talent and skill and experience among the older defensemen that are already in the system there in New Jersey, you have about 1.5 to 2 full defensive cores worth of players. So the lack of depth in this defensive pool beyond those big names is not really a concern.
Yeah, for sure. We'll move on to the goalies as well. There's a decent amount of goaltenders here. I'd say there's 3 main ones in the system that I think are decent odds of kind of being decent players. Obviously, Mikhail Yegorov, first and foremost, that they just added at 49th overall. We already talked about his composure, his calmness, his puck tracking ability, and the size that he brings in net. I think that's a decent combination of tools that he can work around, kind of build his game around, improve his technique, get a bit more panicky, which is a weird thing to say about goalies, but sometimes you do need to be a bit panicky. And I don't really see that in Yegorov's game almost at all. And you have Jakub Malik, who they added a couple drafts ago, who's been doing pretty well in Liga recently. 915 save percentage in Liga is not half bad, and it's looking fairly good for him. He's been looking like a decent addition. I liked his addition in his draft year when I was the New Jersey Devils team scout for Dauber prospects. He was one of the prospects that I went and looked at, asked for tape about, and kind of went into a deep dive on him. And I really liked his his aggression, his composure, his ability to go post to post and make big saves, at big moments, especially. So he's a goalie I'd keep a lookout on because he's been pretty interesting. And obviously Veti Luhivara, who they just added in as kind of a late round swing, which is what I like to see with goalies. You never know what happens with them, so you might as well take a late round swing, see what happens with them. So I like those three guys in net long term for the New Jersey Devils. Let's talk about the needs, and I think the clear one stands out when we're talking about the forwards. I think they need to add more top six forward talent. I don't think they have anyone in their pool that really matches that. They tried to add that with Alex Holtz. It didn't work out. They just traded him in the offseason for Paul Cotter and a pick. But they need to go for another big swing, I think. Alex Holtz not working out should not discourage them from trying to find the next 35, 40, 45 goal scorer on their team. This shouldn't discourage them from trying to get another elite playmaker to kind of shoulder Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt and those guys. They need more forward talent. I think that you can never have enough kind of top six forward talent in your prospect pool. Because if you don't have a spot for him in the lineup, just trade him. It'll get you something good. So I think that's a main need. Would you agree?
100%. I couldn't agree more with that. I think that the lack of clear top six upside there at forward is a clear hole in this prospect pool. In terms of like the high end talent on the blue line, there are no issues there whatsoever, with multiple top 10 picks being invested in solidifying that position over the past 4 drafts. And in net, I think there's enough skill to kind of just sit on and allow to marinate. But yeah, at forward, there's quite a few players that could end up cracking a bottom 6 in the NHL, but I don't know if there's a single one that I'm confident in cracking a second line even, let alone a first.
For sure. So in terms of a grade, we've got a C plus for them. I think that's on par with what we're seeing right now. Silayev and Casey bring that grade up a lot. The recent graduations of Luke Hughes and Simon Nemec bring that grade a lot down.
Yes.
But really, it's just a lack of overall upside outside of Silayev and Casey that makes this kind of this group of prospects, as it is right now, a bit difficult. But that's a good sign for teams. When you have big names graduating at key moments, your prospect pool is going to take a dip, and that certainly what's happened with New Jersey this past season. But that wraps things up for our second segment. We'll get into our third here, where we talk about the 2024-25 projections and expectations that we have for the New Jersey Devils. But just before, a quick word from our sponsors at eBay Motors.
Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks to exhaust kits, LED headlights, and far more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you're always going to find exactly what it is that you are looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, which is available to US customers only, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Alrighty, so let's close things off here with our final segment. We'll talk about our projections and expectations for the 2024-25 New Jersey Devils. And I think everything really starts off with their ability to step back into playoff contention. I think that that's the expectation that fans have. I think that's the expectation that we have as well, especially with the growth of their elite young pieces. We're talking about the Hughes brothers and Simon Nemec. A lot rests on their shoulders in terms of stepping up and making a bit difference. But I mean, they also have Timo Meier, they also have Nico Hischier, they also have Jesper Bratt. They've got a decent top 6 core to work around with. It's just about adding more steps to their games for those young players. So yeah, if Luke Hughes can make himself the cornerstone of this New Jersey Devils blue line, make himself a top pair defenseman, step into an elite role and kind of take this team by the reins offensively, which I think he can. He's definitely got the skill level, the intelligence, the awareness to do it. He's a fantastic player. It's looking good for the Devils, but I also think Simon Nemec could take a step up as well this next season. He was really kind of sheltered this last year and was kind of testing out the waters. I think that this season is an opportunity for him to show what he's got at the next level, show how intelligent and how brilliant he is from the blue line, and how well he reads the game. I think the other step to this is a goaltending reinforcement, right? They added 2 key pieces in the offseason in net, and I think that's setting them up for good success moving forward, right?
For sure. I mean, like the Jake Allen trade at the deadline already boosted the regular season results from that point onwards last season. And when he actually drops into a more comfortable backup role or 1B role, as he's been playing mainly with Montreal in the past couple of seasons, I think that you're going to see the effectiveness of that goaltending tandem really significantly increase, especially because his new like pairing mate in net is going to be Jacob Markstrom, acquired from the Calgary Flames, which is a real boost in quality there in goal. I think a tandem of Markstrom and Allen is going to add a lot of experience and trust in the goaltending position among that team, and allow the younger players on the ice, among the skaters, to take increased levels of risks. Whereas last season, any risk had a real big chance of ending up in their own net. At this stage, with more experience there in goal, I think that you're going to see young players really test their limits a little bit more and test what they're capable of skill-wise at the NHL level, because the risk of it ending up back in their own net is going to be significantly mitigated with this new influx of talent. And that's not even just true for the net itself, because there's also a real solidification of the defensive core here. Whereas, like, yes, of course, there's two young pieces on this defensive core, and they're going to have Dougie Hamilton back for a full healthy season, which is going to be a big difference from last year. They also went out and added Brett Pesce, a defensive specialist from Carolina, as well as Brendan Dillon from the Winnipeg Jets, both as free agents, on top of going out and picking up Jonathan Kovacevic from the Montreal Canadiens, a player who will be a very solidifying piece as a number 6 or number 7 defenseman in this core, to just bring a decent level of intelligence, size, and breakout ability to the game. And I think that with those additions and the existing talent on the blue line, there's a really strong spine that this team has this season that they lacked last year. So it's going to be a different look for the New Jersey Devils, and hopefully that's able to get them back into that playoff contention window.
100%. I think the main other thing that I really like about their offseason additions was the addition of Paul Cotter and Stefan Nason to kind of fill out their bottom 6. Because like we said, they have a decent core of top forwards. I thought what they really missed was depth and proper depth. Placing Dawson Mercer in a role where he's taking a step back offensively in order to play more defensive minutes, I don't think is a good idea. I don't think that's maximizing what you've got in your pool. So that gives you the opportunity with Nason and Cotter in your bottom 6, especially as a pair of centers, gives you the opportunity to give Dawson Mercer a chance in the tops on the second line. Playing with the likes of Heischer and Brad, or or Hughes, or that kind of group. It gives you a good opportunity to kind of place him in a better role. So offseason additions of bottom 6 players doesn't really look like much sometimes, but sometimes it's little stuff like that, like where you put certain players that had to take a step back, placing them back in a role where they can succeed. Things like that I think is key. And I think that, a lot of it rests on a healthy Dougie Hamilton as well. If Luke Hughes is your top power play quarterback at 21 years old, cool, great. But if you can have a more experienced veteran top power play presence than Dougie Hamilton on your blue line, amazing, even better. That leaves Luke Hughes as your second power play quarterback. How great is that? So it's stuff like that. I find it really interesting. In terms of point projections that we have for the young players, we singled out 3 young players that we think are probably gonna take a little step up in production. First, Luke Hughes. Obviously, depending on where he ends up, he did play top power play minutes for the Devils, but he still put up what was it, 40 points, 45 points last
47.
season? 47. We both think he's probably going to project to go around 55 points this upcoming season, especially if he's playing top pair minutes, top power play. But even if he's playing on a second power play and a second pair, he's got enough offensive skill, and he's grown a lot in the past year. So I think it's fair to say that we can expect a little step up in production up to 55 points ish. And that's an optimistic projection, right? Like that's best case scenario essentially. Speaking of which, Shimon Nemec put up 19 points last year in 82 games. Where do you think he lands moving forward?
Yeah, like our optimistic projection has him at 35 points, but the biggest factor here isn't even necessarily his own progression, but how many minutes he'll be even playing this season, because of the sheer depth there on the blue line. Is he going to be restricted to a role as a number 5 defenseman and just be insulated further, or is he going to be able to solidify him on that second pairing maybe alongside of Brett Pesci. That could be an idea of two players that would complement each other. But I'm curious to see where he ends up in that lineup on opening night. But if he's able to play top 4 minutes this season, I mean, his power play opportunities are going to be pretty limited either way, unless you see another big whack of injuries on the blue line. But I think 35 points would be the optimistic projection here. Maybe 10 goals. He has a bomb of a shot that he hasn't been able to really show off at the NHL level just yet, but maybe he ends up potting a couple goals over the course of this season.
Yeah, for sure. And that leaves us with Dawson Mercer, who we opted to include here. Even though he's an RFA, we're still waiting to see if he signs. I'm pretty sure he's going to sign. I think that the step up in production will come with where he ends up on the New Jersey Devils lineup. Like I said, if he's limited to a third line role, it's going to limit his opportunities a lot. But if he's playing second lines, second power play, that kind of situation, and Dawson Mercer certainly has the skill to do that. I think he can get back above 45 points. He scored close to 50, I believe, or above 50 2 years ago, and took a big step down in production, down to 35 points this past season. I think if he gets back above 45, that's a good season for him, and an opportunity for him to set himself up for his next contract really well. Which is why I think that his next contract, the contract that's coming, is probably going to be a bridge contract, because the Devils aren't going to be banking long term on a player who had a drop in production like that with a big contract, and I don't think Mercer wants that either. I think the best opportunity for Mercer is to sign a bridge deal, 2-3 year deal, show what he's got again in a better role, in a better situation with better teammates, and kind of get back to glory the next season after that. But that wraps things up for our episode. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, remember to like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you thought of the episode, what you think of our grades for the Devils, all that good stuff. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please leave us a rating review and make sure to make us your first listen of the day. For a second listen of the day, make sure to check out Locked On Sports Today. They got all your news and updates about what's going on around sports. Make sure to tune in for our next shows as we continue our prospect coverage for the month of July. This has been Hattie Kalakash, Director of North American Scouting for Dobber Prospects, with Sebastian High, Director of European Scouting for Dobber Prospects, and we hope you tune in next time.